Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, September 11th. A mild and muggy morning here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and it turns very warm this afternoon. High temperatures in parts of the I-95 corridor will be above 90 degrees, maybe 92, 93 degrees in D.C., for example. Well up in the 80s in Philly and New York City. It stays pretty warm on Thursday as well, but then turns much cooler on Friday following a frontal passage. That late week cool down, however, will only be temporary as we turn warmer again this weekend. And in fact, the overall weather pattern looks quite warm for much of the nation as we go through the next couple of weeks through the month of September. Not only is it an overall warm weather pattern for the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic region, the tropical scene is quite active. This is not at all surprising. We've just passed the climatological peak, which actually falls on September 10th. If you go back and look at 100 years worth of storms, this particular plot shows the actual peak right here on September 10th. Today, of course, September 11th, we're right at the climatological peak of the Atlantic Basin tropical season in terms of tropical storm frequency and hurricane frequency. And there are three waves of interest right now. And the first wave looks like it may very well spill out over into the Gulf of Mexico by the end of the weekend. The second wave looks like it may not survive, but the third wave very well could become an important issue for Florida, the rest of the Gulf of Mexico region in about 10 days or so. Let's kind of take a closer look at the tropical scene right now. And here it is, the latest map from the NOAA's National Hurricane Center in Miami. Again, three different waves right now. None of these are named storms at the moment. However, certainly the first one and the third one have to be closely monitored. This first one looks like it'll head towards the west to northwest and spill out over into the Gulf of Mexico. Could very well become an important rain producer in the northern Gulf of Mexico, let's say early next week. So that is wave number one. Wave number two right here looks like it won't survive. It has a limited favorability in terms of atmospheric conditions over the next couple of days. That one may not survive, but this is one of some concern here, just off the west coast of Africa, which sits right in this region right here. Last week we showed some satellite images of the continent of Africa with multiple waves. This is one of those particular waves, and indeed kind of a just lining up in the Atlantic Basin as well as over the continent of Africa. This wave will move basically due west over the next several days, and in about 10 days or so it could very well be an important player in Florida or the rest of the Gulf of Mexico region. So again, three different waves. The first one and the third one have to be closely monitored, one in the near term and one for potential longer term impact on the southeastern part of the U.S. Well, one of the important factors with respect to tropical activity this time of the year is what's going on in the upper part of the atmosphere. This is a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern over a 5-day period. And this particular map is the current 5-day period. These forecast maps are from the ensemble run of the GFS at 6Z last night. If indeed there is high pressure sitting over the Mid-Atlantic region or the northeast U.S. or southeastern Canada this time of the year, that often opens the door for tropical systems to move from the east to the west, kind of sliding underneath that ridge towards Florida, the Bahamas, Gulf of Mexico region. And indeed, you'll see here over the next 10 days or so, we have lots of high pressure ridging over the Mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. and southeastern part of Canada. That's why I'm especially concerned for the same region that was a threat during Hurricane Dorian, namely the Bahamas, Florida, the Gulf of Mexico. This is, again, the current 5-day region, 5-day period. And not only is this an important player with respect to potential tropical storm activity in the southeast U.S., but of course it is contributing to a warmer overall weather pattern with high pressure aloft. We'll have basically above normal temperatures over the next several days. And one exception will be Friday, a one-day cool down following a frontal passage on Thursday night. By the way, the front could cause some thunderstorms later today and tonight, and again later tomorrow into tomorrow night in the Mid-Atlantic region. But again, this is the current 5-day time period with high pressure ridging over the mid-Atlantic region and really throughout central and eastern Canada as well. Let's now jump ahead to days 6 to 10 and take a look at what happens here. Only an intensification of that ridging. Now this is for the time period roughly September 16th through September 21st. At days 6 to 10, this suggests tropical systems may indeed slide underneath the ridge, and here it's kind of a reflection of a potential tropical system right in this region right in here. Again, we're talking 6 to 10 days out, but this is the time period that third wave we just spoke of in the eastern part of the Atlantic could very well become an important player for the Bahamas, Florida, Gulf of Mexico. So again, we have high pressure ridging in place well to the north across southeastern Canada, and that often results in tropical waves sliding underneath towards the southeastern part of the U.S. Well, let's walk through some surface forecast maps from the 6E GFS model run. This is the operational version. Earlier we looked at the ensemble version of the GFS. These maps, by the way, from tropicaltidbits.com. Starting off rain-free here in the mid-Atlantic region, but some shower activity showing up in the forecast map for early Wednesday morning. Let's push ahead. Again, there'll be a frontal system approaching the area. This initial push is relatively weak, but there certainly can be a shower or thunderstorm in the I-95 corridor region late today or more likely early tonight. Again, in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Some of these storms could be on the strong side, so we'll have to monitor that threat as well. Notice down here in the far lower right part of this forecast map, we're starting to see a reflection of low pressure down over the Caribbean Sea here. Let's now move forward here. And here is perhaps that wave number 1 we were talking about by tomorrow morning, 24 hours out, starting to head towards the over the Bahamas, towards Florida here. And again, we have another potential round of showers and thunderstorms later tomorrow night as that cool frontal system moves in. And then here is the first wave we talked about closing in on the Gulf of Mexico. And here we get by Friday morning, we'll have strong high pressure to the north. Again, allowing for a tropical system to kind of slide in underneath into the Gulf of Mexico here right over the Florida Straits at this particular time. This is Friday morning. A cool day in D.C., Philly, New York City. Highs only in the low to mid 70s, following well up in the 80s for the day on Thursday, in the 90s in some areas this afternoon. Let's keep pushing forward here now. We'll kind of speed things up. And here is a wave in the Gulf of Mexico region on Saturday. Again, this is from the 6E GFS model run, and it could become an important rainmaker for the northern Gulf late in the weekend, early next week. That's wave number 1 of that threesome that we just saw. The middle wave looks like it won't survive, but then let's just move way out in the longer range just to see what the GFS is hinting at right now. And here we go. This is way down the road. 10 days from now has another wave, and that's the third wave. This is just speculation stage at this time, but indeed the GFS model has that headed also into the Gulf of Mexico. The European, by the way, has that farther to the north and east, maybe over the Bahamas or sliding towards Florida. Again, that's 10 days out, still in the speculation stage, but bottom line here is we are at the climatological peak of the Atlantic Basin tropical season right now. There are 3 waves in the Atlantic Basin. It looks like the first wave may become an issue over the Gulf of Mexico by the latter part of the weekend, and then that third wave in about 10 days or so from now may very well also become an issue for places like the Bahamas, Florida, the rest of the Gulf of Mexico region. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.